are Ferrari favourites.
Feels too bold to actually say that right now, but it's their best chance by far.
But what about Charles then? He's just had what he called his worst weekend in Formula One. Do you think he's going to be on the back foot?
I have to say Canada is not a good preparation for it because he was so despondent.
So I think you're going to see the bounce back from Charles this weekend.
Do you have to treat Monaco differently to other street tracks?
You can't treat it any other way. Monaco just treats you differently.
If George is going to beat Kimi, he's probably going to have to resort to some ways of beating him off the racetrack.
It's operation take pressure and expectation off yourself, isn't it? That's what it is for George.
This might be the closest, most competitive qualifying session that we have all season long.
Alpine and Gucci are getting together from 2027.
There's going to be some excited people on the old paddock walk-in on Thursdays, aren't there? When the Alpine drivers come in dripping in Gucci.
Welcome everybody to F1 Nation's preview of the Monaco Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson and I'm back with my regular teammates, Jolyon Palmer and James Hinchcliffe. Guys, first up, how are the boys?
Good, very good, TC. Absolutely scorching in the UK. Do you remember how cold it was that Sunday of Canada? Got off the plane and it was like tropical weather.
Bit of a shock.
Yeah.
Mind you, it didn't look much better in Indy, Hinch, actually, where you were, right?
It was not a little warmer, but the same threat of rain throughout the weekend. But ultimately, rain held off for the most part, and managed to get in all 500 miles of what was, I mean, an absolute legendary race at the Speedway. Going to go down in history as one of the greatest of all time. Closest finish in 110 years. To be on site for that, to be in the booth for that was something truly special. So congrats, Felix Rosenquist, on quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, it was mega. That last lap was awesome, wasn't it? But we haven't spoken to you, Hinch, since the Canadian Grand Prix. I hope you've had a chance to re-watch it since last Sunday. What did you make of Kimi Antonelli's fourth on the bounce?
I mean, look, how much did we talk on this show about how this was going to be a pivotal one? And like, look, let's ignore the DNF from George for a second. Let's look at those first 30 laps. JP, you said it in the booth. You said, this race has the making of a champion. It was kind of like whoever came out on top of this battle, because it was an epic battle for those first 30 laps, was really sort of planting their flag. But I got to be honest, at a track that we know George runs so well at, for Kimi to be as close as he was the entire weekend, and the aggression that we saw from him when it comes to racecraft, oh man, I've been so impressed. The little sprint race faux pas aside, I think he's the only driver that didn't see that coming, I guess, into turn one on the outside. But he cleaned up his act for the Grand Prix. Only just. My God, it's close for teammates, but I love that. I love the fact that he's willing to push it to the absolute nth degree. That's what you see out of, the Max Verstappens of the world. That's what you see out of champions. And so it's, a record-breaking weekend in Montreal as well, right? First driver to win their first four in a row, and it's a true statement for sure.
I got to pick you up on one thing here, Hinch, as well. Do you remember a few weeks ago, I don't know if it was after China or Japan, and we were talking about the rivalry there, and I said, yeah, I've seen George get his elbows out. And you were like, I don't know if Kimi's got it in him. To be fair, I didn't disagree. But What we saw in Canada was, I think Kimi has got it in him, no?
I completely agree. It was, he was pushing it, I mean, borderline irresponsibly at times. And not even just for a teammate, just for the sake of finishing the Grand Prix, firing it off a few times. But they never made contact. Ultimately, George was ahead when his engine failed, but man, Kimi was quicker. I don't think that there's a doubt in my mind that over the distance, it was going to be very tough for George to keep him back. That amount of pressure that he was putting on him the entire time, both drivers making mistakes when they were out in front. We saw them both locking up into 10 only when they were leading, never when they were the trailing car. So this is a fun little battle we've got.
And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens in Monaco, which is such a unique racetrack, isn't it? And it's 10 years since Red Bull infamously cost Daniel Ricciardo victory in Monaco when they weren't ready for his pit stop. And perhaps more memorably for this show, it's also 10 years since F1 Nation's very own JP had his first taste of Monaco in an F1 car.
Into the barriers it is, Jolyon Palmer. The virtual safety car will now bring this race to a halt, and down at Saint-Devote, Jolyon Palmer crashes out of his first Monaco Grand Prix, bringing to an end what has been a pretty wretched weekend for the British driver.
On the zebra crossing, it was a zebra crossing, lit up the rear tyres, spat him straight into the barrier.
Absolutely nothing he could have done about it.
JP, I'm so sorry to remind you of that.
Are you?
Yeah, cheers, TC. Cheers. All the great memories come flooding back on this show. Astute from Martin Brundle, and maybe a let off from Crofty there. Nothing I could have done about it. Possibly I could have gone a little bit slower over it or something, because I was the only one that got tripped by the zebra crossing. But haunting days.
But JP, let's put a positive spin on it now, because you actually won at Monaco twice in GP2. The feature race, the most recent one in your championship year. Just tell us about Monaco and what this legendary racetrack has in store for the drivers.
Yeah, it's my favourite track. It's unbelievable. I was actually always quick there when I was racing in GP2. Won there twice, as you said, and the buzz of driving is just, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. The track feels as narrow as it looks on the telly. Possibly it feels even tighter, but you just get locked in. You're in the zone, the bumps, the curbs, the walls, it all just becomes second nature. And yeah, I, up until Formula One, loved it. Got there in a Formula One car, and as Crofty mentioned, it wasn't a great weekend because I already crashed a couple of times then, so it was a different experience, but it is such a cool race. And actually, even now, it's one of my favourites in the year.
Do you have to treat Monaco differently to other street tracks? Is it different to Baku? Is it different to Singapore?
Yeah, but it's almost so different that you can't treat it any other way. Monaco just treats you differently. I mean, you leave the pits, you head up the hill out of Saint-Devote, and you're just staggered at how narrow it is, how easy it is to crash at any given moment. You've got so much horsepower. It's dirty and dusty at the start of a race weekend. There's obviously a temporary track, and all of those things play out. And you just cannot attack from the off. You have to build into Monaco. I think the other circuits, you've got a little bit more leeway. Singapore, Baku, your big braking zones, you've got more margin. Even if you go off at Saint-Devote or Mirabeau, there are some runoffs there, but you don't really want to guarantee that you're going to be using them. You still have to build up because they're a tricky reverse out. If you get caught in two minds, you can easily stuff it in the barriers. And then there's the whole second half of the lap after the chicane, which is probably the one where you will see loads of yellow flags in practice because you can bail through there a bit quicker. But the rest of it is pretty exhilarating. To back the swimming pool, and then the Rascasse and Anthony Nogues right at the end as well. How many times have you seen someone just brush the barriers there? It's just like nothing else. But that's what makes it so insane and puts a smile on everyone's face.
It's so unforgiving. I mean, Hinch, of all the racetracks you haven't yet raced on, is Monaco kind of top of the list of the ones you'd love to do?
Yeah, it's on the podium for sure. I always loved street tracks. I always loved that challenge, the zero margin for error. How much are you willing to push through that mid corner? How early are you willing to get on the power? Is it going to stick on the exit? I always really loved that challenge. And then obviously, the history of that place. That's what makes, these hallmark events so special, is the history, right? You could go put a tight, twisty street course somewhere else in the world, but it's not going to be Monaco. So, for sure, that's one that I've always wanted to take a crack at in something. Maybe not straight into an F1 car, but it'd be nice to go there.
That's
like,
where,
I don't know,
your
F3.
debut with Haas. Yeah, we're going to take you to Monaco, Hinch. We'll tick 2 boxes off with one.
Look, what do you think the 2026 cars are going to be like there? I mean, I have been excited about Monaco since before the start of the season. All the added talk that we have with the electrical motor now. It's kind of like these cars were made for Monaco, is my feeling. What do you guys think?
Yeah, 100%. I think from the very moment I arrived in Bahrain and saw them moving around a lot more, they've got less downforce, and I really think the shorter wheelbase is going to be more interesting here. I think the cars are just They are just smaller as well, but not by a huge amount that's going to change anything. But it's the shorter wheelbase where they're livelier. You could see it in Canada as well, the way that a lot of the drivers were just hustling with the rear sliding. Imagine you've got that now in Monaco. They are just a little bit pointier, and they've got less downforce. You combine those two, plus the fact they're a little bit smaller, and it's going to be brilliant, I think.
And the forecast is not great for Friday. There's going to be a little bit of rain around on Friday. I think the weekend looks clear, but first laps for Arvid Lindblad in a Formula One car around Monaco might be wet.
And first laps for these cars for a lot of drivers, certainly on a race weekend in the wet, to be at Monaco. I mean, we heard all the concerns about Montreal with the walls being close and all the rest of it. Well, this is a completely different thing there. So I hope for their sake. I'm curious to see what these cars are like in the wet. I really hope for the driver's sake their first wet experience isn't in Monaco.
So they were saying in Canada, if it's wet in Canada, it really doesn't get worse than this or harder than this. It can. That'll be Monaco.
Monaco's like, hold my beer.
This episode is sponsored by Shopify. Don't you find it amazing how quickly you can fill an online basket and how quickly checkout can make you give up on the whole thing entirely? You get stuck trying to remember a password, looking for your bank card, updating your delivery details, and what should have taken 30 seconds somehow becomes an unnecessary admin task. But that all becomes a distant memory when you see that purple Shop Pay button. Because with Shop Pay, your details are already saved, so checkout becomes incredibly quick. Just a couple of taps, and you're done. And that's all thanks to Shopify, the commerce platform powering millions of businesses around the world, from huge brands to people just getting started. Shopify gives businesses everything they need in one place. Ready-made website templates, AI tools that help with product descriptions and images, plus built-in email and social media tools to help brands reach customers more easily. And if you ever get stuck, Shopify's always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. So less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/nation. Go to shopify.com/nation. That's shopify.com/nation. Guys, let's look at the pecking order now, because after Canada, Lewis Hamilton, who just finished second, was asked about Ferrari's chances of beating Mercedes in Monaco. And he said, that's the one track that power is not king. I think it's definitely a car performance track. And I think our car can be really strong there. Are Ferrari favourites? Is Lewis Hamilton favourite? Is Charles Leclerc favourite? What do you think?
By far, it's their best chance. Are they favourites? It's tough to call. It's really tough to call. I think when you look at the performance in slow speed and medium speed corners over the start of the year, they've been the standout car. They've got really good ride quality, good compliance over the bumps and curbs. They never make bad starts. It looks like Mercedes have maybe started to figure out how to get better starts as well, but you can kind of guarantee the Ferrari starts. So maybe we do have to start thinking this is a Ferrari, the team to beat. Feels too bold to actually say that right now, but it's their best chance by far. And I've been hanging my hat on this being their race winning moment in 26. I'm sticking with it.
Well, and Hinch, which driver do you think? I mean, on the evidence of Canada, you probably have to say Hamilton, but which of the two Ferrari drivers do you think will go best?
No, I think on the evidence of historical results at Monaco, you'd go Leclerc. For me personally, I mean, as much as, he was touting Montreal being the worst weekend of his Grand Prix career, there is something special about that place. He is something special around that place. And I agree completely with JP. I think it's impossible to say that Ferrari's the favorite. Just, you've got a team that's won every Grand Prix so far. It's hard to count them out, right? But if you were to pick a singular driver outside of the Mercedes duo, for me, it's Charles. The Ferrari, I think, can be competitive, and he is just so special around there. I don't think that whatever gains, Hamilton may or may not have found are going to be enough to overcome, that hometown advantage that Charles has there.
So when you look at the sectors from Canada, you get a bit of a tell as to who might have good Monaco performance from particularly the first sector in Montreal, a little bit of the second sector as well. And Mercedes were really quick in the final sector. I think Kimi was a tenth and a half up in qualifying over anyone, and George was the second quickest car. They have the best straight line performance, but like Lewis has said, that's not worth a huge amount in Monaco. And so that's why I think Ferrari got to be taken seriously. I think Lewis in sprint qualifying was the fastest of anyone in the first sector. In actual qualifying, I think he was neck and neck with Kimi up until sector 3, where Kimi made the difference of 0.3. So that's where it comes from. There's evidence.
But what about Charles then? He's just had what he called his worst weekend in Formula One. He has actually just cancelled a whole load of commitments between Montreal and Monaco as well. Some of them related to the team themselves, not just media commitments. I don't know how difficult is it to pick yourself up after what you think is your worst weekend in Formula One? Do you think he's going to be on the back foot going in, or can you just put in a different chip in your brain and just get going from FP1?
FP1 will be really important for him just to have that reset. And I think before I've been saying Charles Monaco is going to happen, it's on the cards, I have to say Canada is not a good preparation for it because he was so despondent the whole way through Saturday. This is it is the worst weekend he's ever had. Sunday, he just sounded so glib, didn't he, on the radio? Just don't talk to me until the last lap. Had that sort of silly spin. And I would say for the first time in an awfully long time, almost in his whole career, was categorically outpaced by a teammate. Before, if Lewis has been ahead or if Carlos Sainz has been ahead, even if you take it back to Seb Vettel being ahead, it's been like ahead by hundredths and then they're 50-50-ish and it lands towards the teammate. Whereas Charles can then have these weekends where he's just 2 or 3 tenths up the road, a little bit like Lewis had in Canada. So I think that's why you saw a different side of him, where he's actually it's not actually that close. He is just not feeling the grip. So then the next race is Monaco. It's his best one. Is that the perfect tonic? Is that the perfect place for him to come back, just feel his groove? Or is it a bad time to have his best race when he's arriving without the confidence? And as you said, cancelling the media commitments as well, this obviously shows that he's not in a natural headspace. He's feeling like he needs a reset here, feeling like he needs to have probably just a few days out, get away from it, and then regather himself, because it's his biggest race of the year, certainly coming up.
I felt things spiralled in Canada. It just got worse by the day. And I mean, Hinch, how difficult is it to pull yourself out of that whirlpool of doom, if you like, when it's happening to you over a Grand Prix weekend? It's not that hard. We, drivers at this level have been through weekends like this going back to go-karting. If this was the fifth race on the bounce that Charles was being, handily beaten by Hamilton, that he was chippy on the radio, that he was canceling commitments, maybe a cause for concern. A bad weekend happens. It did seem like, look, Charles, everyone's had bad weekends. He's had bad weekends before. This one did seem to affect him a little bit more, and to make the claim that it was, his worst Grand Prix weekend ever is maybe mildly concerning. Maybe that shows more of kind of where he's just at with the team in general right now. This is an interesting period for him and for that team, and what potential, future relationship they have. But no, I think to your point, Jolyon, this is the perfect tonic. We were talking about this in relation to George coming to Montreal. This, Miami's a bogey track for George. Montreal's a strong one. He went there, sprint pole, sprint win, Grand Prix pole, was leading when the car failed. He went to a track that is usually statistically good for him and performed. It helped kind of bring him back. This is a very similar scenario. You heard Leclerc say, that Montreal's a bogey track for me. We know that Monaco is a place that he has excelled at his whole career. It's not like he's had one good race there. He's had several incredibly strong performances there. Canceling all the commitments, it's a bold move. It's an interesting move, but
I mean, Jolyon, you can probably agree with me on this one. If you ever found yourself in a position for whatever reason where you had no commitments building up to a race weekend, my God, did you show up feeling better? Like you just feel more rested, more prepared, whether it was an illness or whether they're just for whatever reason you had to cancel stuff or you had nothing to do before you got to a Grand Prix or back to a race weekend. It makes a difference. You feel better, more recharged, more ready to go. So I think you're going to see the bounce back from Charles this weekend.
I think it's just going to be the most intense weekend for him. The media scrum, I'm sure he'll be shaking hands with royalty and having just a really busy time of it on the weekend. And even then, the intensity of his weekend is just that little bit more than anyone else's intensity in Monaco, which is already, by the way, really, really high. So I think if they were heading to Barcelona, I think he'd get over a bad weekend. I think he'd face the media and just say, the same lines, tough weekend, he'll move on. But I think because he knows it's Monaco next, there is a great chance for Ferrari to be there. He knows he needs to bounce back, and people talk about just the reset after you have a bad weekend, and sometimes just having a few days away and just blanking it out and coming back just thinking, no, Canada pretty much didn't happen. You have to just think you're going to be the man again. You're always good in Monaco. I think that's what's going on.
How much does he need to be doing back in Maranello? Because I'm still fascinated by something Mattia Binotto said on last week's F1 Beyond the Grid podcast, which was Michael Schumacher was a better leader than he was racing driver at Ferrari. He said he set us in a direction, and every single person, all 600 people, as was the case back then, wanted to follow Michael. And I find it interesting. That's what Ferrari have been used to with Michael. I feel that's maybe what they've been craving since Michael left all those years ago, because there'll still be a lot of people there who work with Michael.
I think there's a couple of things to throw into the picture here. Number one, Michael Schumacher never had a teammate like Lewis Hamilton. So it's very difficult, I think, for Charles to be the de facto leader at Ferrari when the other guy is Lewis, who's achieved so much. So the team naturally have to balance out both. And you've got Lewis off the back of a really great weekend. So it's not easy for Charles to come back and be like, this is how we need to sort it out. This is because they'd just be like, well, hang on. But Lewis was good. It was up to you, pal. You work out how to sort you out. The other thing is there's so many races now. So when Schumi was spending more time with the test team, back at Maranello, there were probably, I'd say, somewhere like 16, 18 races in the season. You've now got another 4 to 6 to 8 more races. And I do think the mental capacity then is harder for the drivers now than it was in terms of the mental load for them 20 years ago when Schumi was at Ferrari. Nonetheless, I do agree, Schumi was obviously an outstanding leader and galvanized them. But that's just a couple of differences I see there.
I get your point about the number of races, but back then in the Schumacher era, there was a lot more testing. I remember at the height of the Bridgestone-Michelin tyre war, we used to have a day off in Monaco. So first and second practice used to be on the Thursday. Friday was a day off, and then you'd have final practice and qualifying on the Saturday and the race on Sunday. And Schumi used to go back to Maranello, to Fiorano, and practice his starts and just get out on the test track on the Friday to just put into practice what he'd learned on the Thursday. So, that commitment, that level of commitment from him was extraordinary.
I think you bring up a great point, though, that because testing was open and Ferrari had a test track at the factory, Schumi was there all the time, right? So in all of his days off from racing, you'd be there anyway. So I do think it was an easier landscape for a driver to successfully kind of fill that role. I don't disagree that the leadership that Schumi had was revolutionary, and I think set the tone for some future champions. But it is a slightly different situation, I think, in 2026.
Going back to practice starts on the Friday in Monaco as well is commitment. You only need a half good start in Monaco to hold position. He could have had a bad start and he'd still be winning the race. So extra marks for Schumi for that.
This is a paid advertisement for BetterHelp. I love summer, but if I'm being honest, I do think it can sometimes come with this strange pressure to make the most of absolutely everything. There are plans to organise, people to see, places to be. And you often find that all the things that are meant to feel relaxing can actually start feeling quite overwhelming. And I think a lot of people end up spending summer trying to keep everyone else happy without really checking in on how they're feeling themselves. And that's why I think it's important to build in a bit of time for yourself too. Set some boundaries that serve you. And a great way to do that is with therapy, because therapy isn't only there for moments of crisis. It can also be a space to better understand what you need, feel more comfortable setting boundaries, and create a version of summer that actually feels enjoyable for you, rather than something you're just trying to survive. BetterHelp is one of the world's leading online therapy platforms with over 30,000 qualified therapists worldwide. They help match you with a therapist based on your needs and preferences, and all you need to do is focus on what you want to get out of it, and if it doesn't feel right, you can switch therapists at any time. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/F1Nation. That's betterhelp.com/F1Nation. Let's bring it on to Mercedes then, the team that has won every Grand Prix so far this year. Antonelli is now 43 points ahead of Russell, and George said after Montreal, didn't he, that it feels like it's Antonelli's title to lose now. I'd love your thoughts on those mind games. I'm sure he doesn't think that, does he? But the fact that he still said it, what game is he playing?
It's a fun game to play, isn't it? I mean, you've got to at this point, because he's proving to be an equal at minimum on the racetrack. So if George is going to beat Kimi, he's probably going to have to resort to some ways of beating him off the racetrack, which we've seen before. We've seen that kind of stuff with Hamilton Rosberg, with Senna Prost. That type of mind game is, I think, a really important part of what we've got coming up. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Look, the points gap is nothing to worry about at this point in the season. It's the performance on the track, right? It's the stopwatch that should be the cause for concern.
It's operation take pressure and expectation off yourself, isn't it? That's what it is for George. So I felt in Canada that he had a really good weekend, but it almost felt like a kind of losing weekend because he was only just beating Kimi. And I think we've had this expectation on George that we've spoken about all season long. I think even after Miami we had the discussion that you'd still put your house on George. And I do now feel like it's kind of an unfair expectation just because Kimi stepped up a huge amount. And I think we have to kind of accept that Kimi is not the same Kimi from last year. So George doing a very good job. He's up against a different rival. So if he's just beating Kimi slightly in Canada, which he was doing, that's good. That's what he has to do. And we're all thinking this is a George track. He needs to be 2/10 up the road. And the fact that he was duking it out with Kimi, it felt like it was a kind of a loss even before he retired.
Where do you think Antonelli's improved since last year? You say it's not the same Kimi. Is it just consistency?
Pretty much. I think you've got the speed is clearly better as well. I think that comes from confidence. You could see a difference in Kimi, I would say, from China, Saturday afternoon, Sunday, versus anything before and anything after. JT made a good point after Montreal that he had already had a good few races at the end of last year, and the stats would back that up with some great drives, Brazil being the obvious example. But when you look at the start of the year, you look at testing, and it felt like every time George was in the car, he was just a little bit more on it. You had Melbourne, where George, again, would look quicker. Kimi crashed the car in FP3, trying to find something that wasn't there. Did an okay job in the race, but it felt like George had him at arm's length. China, ditto. Went through sprint qualifying. George was there. George was looking good in the start of qualifying and then had his problems. And it was like, click. The confidence that then Kimi had. He had such a great race in China. He's barely been toppled for a session since, until Canada, where it was really, really close. So he's obviously got an incredible amount of talent. That's why he's there. But now I think he's got the confidence, and with it all, the consistency that makes him, I would say, championship favourite as of now.
He's going to be hoping for a better European season than last year. Remember, he scored just those 3 points in 9 races, and actually he crashed in Q1 in Monaco, didn't he, at the Nouvelle Chicane? So he started the race 15th in Monaco last year. Hard to believe it now, but neither Mercedes scored in Monaco last year. So do you think Antonelli is actually the favourite? I've just raved about Ferrari and their chances. We've discussed that, but actually, is Antonelli the man to beat?
In Monaco?
Yeah.
Well, there's still something. I don't know if it's an emotional thing or what, but I still think Charles has the best odds, because Monaco is super unique. And even with that increased confidence that Kimi's got, and even with the advantage that Mercedes has, we've established that the type of track Monaco does not play into that advantage. I still, again, look, this is why we don't bet, Jolyon, because you just said you're now putting the house on Kimi. So your house is gone, mate. Sorry. You don't even have that opportunity anymore.
I'm cutting my losses. I'll downsize.
It's exactly why I don't bet. But if I were to, I think I'd still put my money on Leclerc. I still just think there's something that clicks there. Even when other years Ferrari hasn't been the best car, he still goes there and can chuck it on pole. And, if you're on pole there, it's pretty much game over. So,
what about over the season? George or Kimi or Charles?
I plead the fifth. It's
not on this show. You don't.
I'm running out of reasons to not shift the chips, over to Antonelli. It's the racecraft has been so impressive. He's handling pressure. I'm not going to say flawlessly, but better than I expected. The rant on the radio in the sprint race and Toto having to jump in and be like, focus on the driving, not the moaning. I feel like that's all very teachable. Like, he's a 19-year-old, right? That's an easy thing to kind of calm down. So yeah, he's just done a stellar job these last, sort of 3 weekends. But again, you can look at history, you can look at statistics. I like numbers. I'm a numbers guy. And as you just said, Tom, he had 3 points across the European season last year. But this is a very different season. This is a very different year. We've only got one data point, and that's not a very good one. So there's nothing to indicate that this is not going to be absolutely tooth and nail for the rest of the season. And with what you've seen, bad luck aside, it still looks like Kimi has the edge right now.
Now, you mentioned him doing a stellar job. What a great segue to talk about McLaren, because after such a disappointing race in Montreal, right, when they start on Inters and it just goes from bad to worse from there, are they in the picture for Monaco? Let's not forget that Lando Norris won the Grand Prix from pole position last year. Okay, the new front wing didn't work in Montreal. They've already said they're going to run it again in Monaco. They still believe in it. Can Norris do it again, or can Piastri win for the first time?
They've had a good car in Monaco for the last few years. Obviously, Lando won it from pole. Before that, you've got Oscar running really quickly as well. And their car, again, it's pretty compliant. So that's the key thing that you want, where you want some downforce, but then you really do need it to be compliant. And trying to find the balance between the two of those things, which are in some ways mutually exclusive, is tricky. But McLaren seem to have a good handle on it. So I wouldn't rule them out. I think, again, in the realm of trying to predict the order, I would say McLaren will be it'll be their most competitive effort compared to Mercedes. I think Mercedes have a better understanding still on energy deployment, energy usage, that side of things, and it won't count for as much. I think the McLaren
what tyres to
put
on at the start of a Grand Prix, that as well.
They've got a better handle on that's for sure.
It's funny because I feel like if we were having this discussion, post Miami, you'd say, yeah, absolutely. Street track, Norris was quick in the sprint and the team overall performed very well. But after Montreal, even though a lot of what set them back was strategic and not necessarily pure pace, it doesn't seem like they're as high on the list as Ferrari. But we've been talking about Ferrari at Monaco for a long time, and you almost just sort of forget that McLaren's in this conversation. But I think they very much are. Again, they've got the right power unit. The car's been successful there. The drivers have been successful there. This might be the closest, most competitive qualifying session that we have all season long. Certainly that we have had all season long, and probably one of the most difficult to predict. But for sure, a great team, great car, two great drivers. They're going to be in the mix, absolutely.
How do you think the new generation of car is going to perform? Do you think we could see Lando's pole position of, 19.9 from last year? Do you think we could see that being beaten?
Be surprised overall. I just think that if it's going to be close, it's going to be close on this sort of circuit where it's the shorter wheelbase, the front end will help. But also, this is the sort of one where you want to crank on as much downforce as you can get, and they are short on downforce right now. I don't know. It's really difficult to know if it will get close to the outright pace. What I do know is that they're going to be pushing as they were last year. So the biggest thing in the driving is having your differential of entry speeds and some harvesting and deployment, whereas in Monaco, it's flat out. So we will see the best version of these cars in Monaco.
And there's one team and driver we haven't spoken about. He's a two-time winner in Monaco, Max Verstappen. First podium of the year last time out in Montreal. Red Bull Powertrains' his first podium in its history. Could you see them turning it on in Monaco, or do you think it's too big an ask?
Too big. I think, to Jolyon's point, compliance is so important in Monaco, and that was one of the biggest complaints that Max had in Montreal. And yes, first podium, great drive, great result, happy for them. It took a Mercedes DNF and a double McLaren strategy blunder to even be in the conversation. He was tracked down by, what was that gap that Hamilton closed up? 6, 7, 8 seconds, something like that. Yeah, that podium comes with an asterisk beside it for sure, and I just don't see what that car struggles with, meaning it's going to be as competitive as the first three teams in Monaco.
The only saving grace for Red Bull that I saw was the change that they made from the sprint to qualifying, where they found a good chunk of that compliance. And actually, looking through the sector times again, Max and Isaac Hadjar as well were really quick in the first sector. So that's the only little bit of hope that I could see for them, is actually maybe they did find something there and it brought them closer towards the picture at the front. Well, we'll only know when the car hits the ground, and I feel like they need to start better off than they have done recently.
So, podium predictions, guys. Where are we going? I'm all in, but I'm going to go last. I'm all in on what we've discussed, but go on, Hinch, podium for Monaco.
So I've been saying it. I got to back it up. Leclerc for the win, and then let's go. Who's going to be better, George or Kimi? It's going to be three different teams. It's going to be three different manufacturers on the podium. It's going to be a Ferrari, a Mercedes, and a McLaren. I'll go Lando third. Which Mercedes comes second? No, you know what? I'm going to go Lando second, George third.
Okay, but Leclerc for the win. JP?
Yeah, I'm gonna go quite punchy here. I'm gonna say Leclerc wins, but I think Hamilton is second. It's a Ferrari 1-2, and I'm gonna say third is Lando. We got no Mercedes on the podium. They haven't often gone well in Monaco. They've had dominant years where Red Bulls have beaten them, Ferraris have beaten them. You got Seb and Kimi back in the day. They haven't been great in recent years either. I don't think they get on the podium. So that's my top three.
Headline. Look, I'm with you. I'm all in with Ferrari. I'm going for a Ferrari 1-2. Their first 1-2 at Monaco since 2017. Charles ahead of Lewis with Kimi Antonelli P3. I have more faith in Mercedes at Monaco. I think the car is too good. I think his confidence is too strong, and it's such a confidence track, Monaco, isn't it? It's if he can just keep building as the weekend goes on and not clip the inside wall at the Nouvelle Chicane like he did in Q1 last year. I think Kimi will be really, really strong. But a Ferrari 1-2 at Monaco, that's got to be good for Formula One. Now, guys, before you go, can we finally just discuss a huge deal that was announced last week, just after Montreal? Alpine and Gucci are getting together from 2027, Gucci becoming the title partner. It's going to be called Gucci Racing Alpine Formula One Team. And they're going to race in Gucci colours. I mean, it's a huge story for Formula One. What does a deal like that, what does it tell us about, first of all, Alpine? Let's not forget that they were last in the Constructors' Championship last year, and they've now gone and attracted, one of the biggest global brands, and a very glamorous brand at that, as their title sponsor.
They've got a good team of partnerships. That's what it tells us, number one.
And it also means, JP, that Luca De Meo, who was, the boss of Alpine, is now, what is he? He's the CEO of Kerrang, who are the parent company of Gucci. I'm sure that helped put the deal together, the friendship between Flavio and Luca, but still, they've got it across the line. They've committed the money.
It's not what you know, TC. It's who you know. That deal doesn't get done, I don't think, if Luca De Meo is not in charge of that program. But no, it's obviously, it's huge. A massive, globally recognized brand, very high end. This is what Formula One is. It's a little bit bizarre. Gucci Racing Alpine F1 team is a funny name to have to say. It's going to take us a minute to get used to saying that. But I think it's another huge win for F1. We know Pierre's a big fashion guy, so this is probably something he's excited about. It's going to be an interesting one. There's going to be some very expensive merchandise coming.
There's going to be some excited people on the old paddock walk-in on Thursdays, aren't there?
Yeah.
When the Alpine drivers come in dripping in Gucci.
I would imagine, JP, Team Enstone, when you were there, would you have fancied a nice Gucci suit to come into the track wearing and just looking super cool?
Hey, you'd not say no to that, would you? You'd not say no. You want as a driver, you want decent partnerships. It's a side thing where you're like, oh, we've signed that. Oh, that's quite cool. Maybe that'll come my way. So, it does speak volumes of where Alpine are at, I would say. I think they've done a really good job. Dropping the Renault engines for Mercedes, it just was a good move for them. I felt like they were really stuck with that for the last few years, and just becoming a customer team. I know there was a big picture view on this, and shutting down Viri, all the expertise and the history that they had there was a big sort of controversial question for them. But look at the results. They're moving up in the world. They're signing big brand sponsors, partners, and they're going to look really fashionable.
It'll be interesting to see, does it now become a desirable team? Are we suddenly going to see people scrapping over that second seat? I mean, Pierre's on a long-term deal, but who is going to be alongside him next year now with the performance we're seeing, with the partners we're seeing?
What colours are they going?
Well, I guess it's black and gold. I don't know.
Throwback to my Lotus
the Lotus days. Yeah.
There's a good-looking car.
Yeah, it was. Well, that will all come out in the wash, as they say. Guys, thank you both very much. Great to catch up with you. Please remember that in selected countries, you can watch all the action in Monaco on F1 TV, and in the United States on Apple TV. And in the meantime, do check out F1's other official podcasts. My guest on this week's episode of F1 Beyond the Grid is former Ferrari driver Jean Alesi, talking about his one and only win in Formula One, the Montreal Grand Prix of 1995. That's out on Wednesday, and you can also watch our chat on the F1 YouTube channel. And the latest episode of F1 Explains is all about the mental side of Formula One. That's just below this show on the F1 Nation feed. Thank you very much for listening. We will, of course, be back next Monday to discuss all the big talking points from Monaco, so we'll speak to you then. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.